Actually, that's my signal to go ahead and get started. Thank you to those of you who have joined us today for the Forward Janesville All-Member Conference Call, which we've titled Housing 101, a look at the national and local trends affecting our housing market. Today's call is presented by BMO Harris Bank. BMO Harris Bank has dedicated bankers in the local market who understand your business, industry, and market, and offer solutions tailored to your unique needs. BMO has deep roots in the community with a long history of supporting Forward Janesville and other local nonprofit organizations. Thanks to BMO Harris Bank for their support of this organization and the community. So before we get into the program, I want to remind you all that you can submit a question for any of the panelists just simply by adding it down in the chat function. So just go ahead and pop on at any point and ask a question in the chat function, and we will try to get it to our presenters in real time. Part of what makes this series so great and BMO's support for the call series is the access that it has given us to their team of experts. And they really are a world-class group. We're going to go through and ask some questions of our panelists, but our first panelist today is a returning guest, Sal Guattieri of BMO Harris Bank. Sal has been with us now 3 times, which you pretty much call him an honorary Janesvillian at this point, as much as he's been on with us. So, Sal, it's good to have you back. He is a senior economist and director at BMO Capital Markets with over 2 decades of experience as a macroeconomist. His main responsibilities include analyzing and forecasting the U.S. economy, Canadian and U.S. housing markets, and commercial real estate markets. Once again, we're honored to welcome him back as a panelist to get his perspective on the national housing market and where things may be headed. So, one thing I'm going to do before we get started, I have editorial control over this meeting, and if I hear whirring and buzzing from your particular chat window, I'm going to go mute you. So don't be offended if I mute you. We just want to make sure that our panelists can be heard very well. So I'm going to go through in Hollywood squares and mute everybody. So Sal, welcome. Thank you so much. We do have a few questions for you, but I wanted you to lead off by just giving us a snapshot of the national housing market and where you think things may be headed. So Sal, over to you.
Well, Dan, the national market is basically returning to normal after a 2-year frenzy not seen since the 2006 bubble. That was stoked by cheap credit, strong jobs market, and basically teleworkers spanning across the country. Now, due to poor affordability, home sales have been pretty sensitive to the fastest rise in mortgage rates in decades. We're seeing both existing and new home sales falling pretty quickly back to pre-pandemic levels. And more recent data, weekly data, suggests those declines extended right into the first half of this month. So demand has normalized pretty quickly. Supply has not, though. It's been pretty slow to follow and remains fairly tight. While resale listings are up from earlier record lows, the current 2.5 month supply is still about half the long run norm. As well, rental vacancy rates are very low, so rents are soaring. Zillow's measure up 16% in the past year to May. So sellers still appear to hold all the good cards. Consequently, home prices still rising, quite surprisingly, albeit with some signs of slowing, according to Redfin's weekly data. But the median resale price now has topped $400,000 for the first time ever in May, and that's up 15% in the past year. So sales are cooling pretty fast, but prices have been slow to respond, but I'm quite sure they'll follow.
Okay, thank you, Sal, for that snapshot. So got a couple questions for you. I mean, we'd like to hear a little bit more from your perspective about how are inflation and supply chain issues affecting the national housing market? What are your thoughts on everybody's got supply chain challenges these days? How are they affecting the housing market?
Well, Dan, I mean, they're basically just part of, I think several challenges that the housing market is facing right now. I mean, the two biggest challenge, first, the economy is expected to downshift in response to higher interest rates and basically tighter financial conditions. So we're expecting the expansion, economic expansion, basically to stall later this year and grow only 1% next year. That's probably going to send the jobless rate back above 4%. I think the bigger challenge for the housing market, though, is just overall affordability. It's been stretched wafer thin. If you look at the Atlanta Fed's estimates, the market hasn't been this expensive in 15 years. The median homeowner needs 41% of gross income to cover their housing-related payments on a median-priced home. And that's, that's 8% more income than required back in December. It's about $500 per month extra as well. And that calculation was based on 30-year mortgage rate. That's now gone up another 75 basis points since that time. So it's most likely the U.S. housing market now is every bit as pricey as it was in the 2006 bubble. So it's telling you that the pool of potential buyers is pretty shallow, and sales likely haven't reached bottom yet. May not, at least for another year or so. Now, listings are likely to take a little longer to sell over the next while as well. And so we're probably going to see that pendulum switch back to buyers. At the very least, the record price gains of the past year, I think, are behind us now. And we do expect home prices to steady, if not retreat a little bit later this year. 30-year mortgage rates probably bound to go up a little bit more. I mean, we expect the Fed to raise interest rates another 175 basis points to about 3.5% by the end of this year to control inflation. Now, much of that is priced into mortgage rates, so I don't think they're going to go up too much more, but that's still going to have some impact, worsening impact for affordability. We do expect the Fed to move to the sidelines next year as both the economy and inflation slow. So I think that will give the housing market a bit of a chance to stabilize. But as far as can the market catch up with earlier high demand? I'm not so sure. I think there's just not enough materials and construction workers at the moment to build all the new homes that are probably needed right now. So basically, the number of construction workers up 6% from pre-pandemic levels. I don't think there's much more supply on that front. So if anything has to give here, it's probably on the demand side. Basically, demand falling further rather than supply trying to catch up with the higher demand we were seeing earlier.
That's very interesting, Sal. And I had a question about, how can the housing market catch up to demand? And you fairly well answered that. So, one of the things that you see in the media is sort of people being priced out of the market, right? I mean, with prices being as high as they are, and home ownership is pretty much often the largest source of wealth among families. It's how people build wealth in life. And I mean, with so many people being priced out of the housing market, I mean, what do you think that means for our overall economy?
Well, overall, it means your economy is unbalanced. I mean, you have a large number of lower income households forced to rent. I really can't share in wealth gains from rising house prices. And that really restrains their spending power. They tend to spend a greater share of an extra earned dollar than higher income earners. So, and as well, the more money that goes into mortgage payments, the less money to spend on other items. So, that restrains spending as well. Both issues will tend to hold back economic growth more than would otherwise be the case.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Sal, for that national perspective. So we wanted to start with a broad overview of where things stand nationally, then drill down a little bit local. And Sal, I hope you can stay with us and answer questions as we go along. And I again would remind all of the participants that if you do have a question for any of our panelists, just please do put it in the chat function and we'll try to get those answered in real time. So thanks again, Sal. Always great to hear from you, and we'll come back to you in just a minute. I did want to move along to the local market and start with Kelsey Paasch, the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Advantage Homes, right? Okay.
Correct.
There's an interesting interplay between Advantage Homes and Amwood Homes, and I got a little confused in some of our marketing materials. So Kelsey was very helpful in correcting me there. So she is the Vice President of Sales and Marketing. So Kelsey, just wanted to get kind of the same question as Sal. Give us a snapshot of the local housing market from your perspective. How are things going for you and the company, and what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, so we obviously specialize in new construction homes, so I can speak a lot specifically to that. So let's back up just right before COVID hit. Housing was great. We were booming, we were trucking along. We were still underdeveloped as to where we should have been. Then all of a sudden we come to COVID, everything kind of like comes to this weird little halt because nobody really knows what's going to happen, right? And then all of a sudden people are spending time at home and they're realizing, my home is where I'm spending my time now. It's where my family is. Schooling is coming out of here. My work is coming out of here. I can't go to the movies. I can't go to concert. And so people started to find this extra money that they had in their budgets they weren't spending in other areas. And we're like, I'm going to finally invest in this space that's actually really important to me. And so I think COVID allowed people to really understand the importance of what a home really does for a person and for their family. And so then all of a sudden the housing market exploded, right? Like everybody was looking for a new home, whether it was a new construction home or whether it was a new house. Everyone was looking for a new place that fit their new lifestyle that we all had kind of been thrown into, right? And so all of a sudden you saw all these new people coming into the market wanting to get into a house out of like, unified living spaces and things like that. People wanted to move up and all that. And so we saw a huge shift into the market booming and growing and all that fun stuff. We have seen since then the pricing of houses, because of all that movement in, our supply has gone down, right? The demand has gone up and the supply availability has gone down. And because of that, we've seen a shift. So in the past 2 years, it's been about 32% more in construction costs than what it was 2 years ago, which is, again, it's the reality of that supply and demand that kind of Sal was talking about in his portion of it. And so now what we're seeing is that the costs during the build would fluctuate. Historically, we would see our building prices stay very consistent for about a year. And now we went into the COVID piece and all of a sudden our numbers are switching all over the place and going up and down, up and down. And so we've really had to be strategic in how we're pricing our houses as we go through this piece. One, to ensure that we're keeping them affordable to people, not overcharging, but then also to making sure we're doing our due diligence to the community to price ourselves that we're going to continue to be a builder here for Janesville. So it's been just an interesting shift. Lots of demand still for new homes. As Sal mentioned before, there's still a shortage of houses available, which is still driving a lot of people into the new home portion because they can't find what they want on the market.
Right. It's certainly a challenging environment. And we've heard a lot again about supply chain labor challenges and are interested in hearing from you specifically about what is your biggest supply chain challenge when building a home. And before you answer that, I will say probably a year ago, I was having lunch with Doug Markline on the city council, and he's a home builder in this community, and he said garage doors. That's the thing, you cannot get garage doors. And I said, well, that's unusual. And so it's really nothing shocking at this point. I mean, you could tell me just about anything and I would probably believe you, because COVID has conditioned us to sort of expect the unexpected. Now, what's the news going to have today? So when you're building a home, what is your biggest supply chain challenge?
So if you're talking about specific product, I could give you a laundry list, from garage doors to outlet blue boxes that we need in our homes, and the lack of all of a sudden, like, oh, it's not available anywhere. You can't even find it at Menards type of thing, like white laminate shelving. It goes in ebb and flows, unfortunately. But really, I think the biggest thing that's impacting builders in general right now is probably the lack of being able to completely finish a house, right? So we have backed up items that are taking longer. So on average, like let's just say you're building a house and you have a cabinet, you receive it. Normally within a couple weeks, you can get that, replacement and whatnot and get that installed. Well, now sometimes it's taken up 12, 16, 17 weeks. And so what's happening for a lot of builders is they're going to have to leave their house in partial state, right? Like maybe the garage doors get delayed and we can't get the garage doors in, or maybe there's a broken sash in a window and we need to go back and fix it. So I think that's been a really big challenge when you think about the supply chain part of it, is being able to completely finish the house and hand that over to the consumer. Again, it's just been a different mind shift of how we're adapting, but yet getting people into their homes as quickly as possible. So
Yeah, how are consumers reacting to that, Kelsey? I mean, are people generally understanding and knowledgeable about the way things are in the world right now? Are people being cool with you?
yeah, I would say in general, everyone's really good. I think from the very start of our sales process, we really try to outline, okay, hey, let's be really frank about what's happening in the world right now. Everyone knows about COVID, everybody knows about the supply chains, but until it personally impacts you or a vision or a drive that you have, it kind of can shift it a little bit. So I think we just try to be really transparent. We've also shifted our entire processes of how we do our ordering, how we do our selection process, again, to try to counteract that so that we're being more upfront and trying to get ahead of it as much as possible. But we've had issues where all of a sudden, we have a flooring color on order and all of a sudden we get a call and say, hey, we just got bumped and it's going to be another 8 weeks. And we're like, we got to be installing this in 2 weeks, right? So we're trying to be reactive, give consumers other options that they can do, and also trying to be more thoughtful. So we worked very close with our vendors, like plumbing, great example. We went to our plumber and we're like, hey, we're having all these crazy lead times on all this different plumbing fixtures. Can you help get us some stuff that you can guarantee for us? So we're working with our vendors differently as well to help give those options to our clients of like, this is what we can guarantee for you, to help kind of navigate this all together. So
Yeah. So I think it's pretty clear that one of the themes of today is going to be supply and demand, and there simply aren't enough houses to satisfy demand. So given that fact, I mean, what do you think it's going to take for home builders to build more homes? Are there governmental incentives that you guys would be interested in exploring, or are you aware of policies anywhere that are working? What's the solution to get home builders to build more houses?
well, I think it's twofold. I think one is, and again, Sal kind of discussed this before, was getting the right people there, right? We need people in the trades. So if you kind of look back over the past 10, 15 years, there was this huge shift of education to get people through college. Like you had to go to college to be successful, right? And that's not necessarily the case anymore, which is great from a communication education standpoint. So we worked with Milton High School this past year and a half, and we had a student there who was going through a work program, wanting to learn about the trades and get involved with the trades and things like that. And you see the shift that's happening now where more people are going into the different trades. There was an interesting stat that right now there's like 430,000 openings right now in the construction field, and that each month they're going to need 61,000 more employees on top of that. So really, over the next, what was it, 3 years, 4 years, they're going to be looking at 2.2 million jobs to get us to that point, to get to the housing, to be stable again. So it's helping bring us back from the deficit that we're currently in and to get us to where we need to be. So that's a lot of people that we got to help get them engaged, motivate, and drive. And so I think from a community standpoint, how can we help push and educate people about the opportunities, the lucrative jobs that are in this field? How can they get involved? How they can get involved with different builders in the community, apprenticeships, things like that. So I think there's that whole part of that. The other side of it is I think that I was out in California and San Francisco, they started this program called Accelerated Fund, which I think is kind of an interesting program. And so what they did is the government said, okay, you're the builder, so go buy the land and you start the project. And when you get to X period of time, the city actually takes over all the funding. They pay back the amount that was done back to this fund, and then they continue to support the fund financially for the rest of it. And that allows the builder then to shift the money into the next project. So it's trying to help move that project along a lot quicker. So I think from a government standpoint here, there's different things that we could look at of how do we help support the builders, because right now the financial part is going to be a tough thing when they have to manage a project from very start all the way to end. And then again, if you topple that on top of the supply chains, maybe the project's not able to get done as quickly as what we had historically seen. And so how can the government continue to help support us from the education standpoint of getting the people in the right trades, but then also to helping support the builders who are super passionate and excited about getting the housing here that we desperately need. So
That's great, Kelsey, and thank you very much. You've been awesome as a panelist here, and we'll certainly have you back again. But and I would encourage people, if you've got questions for any of our panelists, Sal, Kelsey, whomever, please do put them in the chat function, and we'll try to get those asked in real time. So thank you, Kelsey. We'll come back to you here in a few minutes. So, wanted to bring in our another resident expert on housing, so to speak. Paul Shield of RK Smith Realty, Caldwell Banker. Paul is a member of our board at Forward Janesville and is really our go-to when we want to talk about the rental market. So Paul, I know we can't see you, but hopefully we can hear you.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hey, how's it going? Just looking for, I remember you were on a call about housing, one of these calls, it's been a year or so ago. And at that time, vacancy rates were essentially zero. Give us a snapshot of how the local rental market is doing today, vacancy rates, et cetera. How are things going today?
You bet. So not a whole lot's changed since we chatted last time. Vacancy rates are hovering probably as a whole around 1, maybe 2%. At RK Smith, we manage about 1,300 units. And if you went to our website today, we're showing 2.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's not good. Not good at all. I have 10 units turning over next month. And most of those already have pre-approved applications waiting for us to be able to show them. So we still do have a big time housing shortage. And if you want to take another flip to this, look at the sales side of stuff. I went to the MLS this morning. Single family homes for sale in Janesville, there's only 54.
Wow.
And all of Rock County, 199. So it's units are definitely needed, and they're coming. They're coming. It just takes time. Yeah,
it does. It does take time, and with demand obviously outpacing supply, rents have to be on the way up. I mean, tell us about average rental rates in Janesville, and is there a point at which the rate becomes unsustainable?
Well, real estate, in my eyes, a whole bunch of it really relies upon unemployment. As long as people are working, people need houses to live, and they're going to bend in other areas in their budgeting to make sure that they do have housing. If you look at the city of Janesville, I did a little bit of research here, and rentals between $500 and $700 a month make up about 8% of our marketplace. From $700 to $1,000 is about 31%. From $1,000 to $1,500 is about 29%, and $1,500 to $2,100 is about 19%. So above that $2,100 would be the balance of what our rental market looks like. Rents do continue to rise. There's no way around it, unfortunately, because costs go up, taxes increase, insurance goes up, maintenance and supplies go up to maintain these properties. But if you look at it as a whole, and you look at our surrounding communities, Janesville is a very affordable place to live and a great place to raise a family.
Absolutely, and that's part of the challenge is a lot of people have come around to that way of thinking and think Janesville is a great place to be. So
yeah,
our problem.
And what I give you, I mean, for at RK Smith on a renewal, that would be when a tenant is up from their first year in their lease. We see somewhere between a 2 to 6% increase based upon demand and cost and where we're at. Now, when a property would turn, like these 10 units that I have turning over this next month, the increase in rent there would typically be somewhere between over the last 2 years would be somewhere between 5 and 13%, based upon location. If there's been insurance increases, tax increases, what we have to do to make sure that investor is taken care of. You know, if you look at the sales stuff in the rental, you know, it's kind of funny. You look back in history, as I talked to the last time we were on the phone together, was looking back in history. I mean, a decade of sales history from 2011 to 2021. And somewhere around 108% increase in value. When you look back at the consumer, 2008 to 2011, the consumer is saying, how in the heck do I get out of this mess? Now we're looking back at 2017 to 2022. How do I get in to this mess?
I know it. There have certainly been big ups and downs in the housing market, even in my 15 years in Janesville. It's oh man, we bought and then the bottom fell out and then things got better and we did okay on the sale. And now it's like, if I could sell my house, well, if
Where do I go?
Go, right, exactly. It's like, sure, I'd sell it, but it's doing this, right? I mean, you can sell it for a lot more, but you're going to pay a lot more on the other end. So it's kind of a wash. But I think there's a lot of people who get these Zillow reports and say, oh my gosh, I'm rich. And it's just, well, not exactly, but at any rate. So Paul, what do you think is, do we have the right balance in Janesville between affordable housing, affordable multifamily units and market rate, or is it tipped to one side or the other? How are we doing in our balance there?
Well, affordable housing is always going to be tough. I mean, every time we put together another project, we've got to make sure that we're thinking about everyone in the community and trying to make sure that we can have some affordable units put in with it. But if you look at our community as a whole, I would say we are quite affordable. And there are programs out there in the community, USDA Section 8, that can help with some of those needs for people that do need a hand. But yes, when we develop more properties, I mean, we need to add affordable and workforce housing to make sure our community is taken care of.
Right. So, Paul, in your opinion, what do you think it's going to take to attract the kind of multifamily development we want to see in Janesville? I mean, is it going to be public sector, private sector? I mean, what is it going to take to get more apartments and multifamily units built?
Sure. It's going to take both the public and the private. I mean, of course, the public has been involved with the private has been involved. You know, we have River Flats, Diamond Ridge, and then we have our units on Highway 11. Looking forward to see the Monterey development take off and keep moving forward. But also what I've really been seeing the most of is the private sector is engaged as well. People that bought duplexes, single family homes from 2008 up to about 2015 were buying them at discount pricing. Now they're starting to step up and bring those homes back to the market and utilizing 1031 exchanges to exchange them into bigger units. One that we just completed, our Center Avenue project. I also am a part owner of Welded Sargo Builders. So we just completed the 20 unit project on the south side. As fast as we built them, we were filling them. We're in the middle right now of building another 8 unit project on Lafayette for another investor. And then we are hopefully to break ground in another 12 unit development this winter. The other thing that's quite interesting too is that when some of these folks are selling their single family homes that they've rented, they're getting 2 for 1 on their money. We have duplex lots on the south side of town that I'm doing an exchange that's going to start on Friday. They're going to break ground on their duplex. They sold a single family, so they're getting 2 for the price of 1. Now they're not paying for it all. They're not paying for the whole duplex. They're going to have a mortgage yet, but they are. When that single family home comes back to the market, it solves another niche that we have that now we'll have 55 homes on the market for that first time home buyer to step into a smaller ranch.
Interesting. Well, Paul, thanks for being on. We're gonna talk a little bit about solutions and kind of bring this airplane home, I guess, so to speak. But stay tuned, stay there, and you wear more hats than just about anybody I know. I had no idea you were Welded Sargo as well, but man, I don't know how you have time to sleep with all this.
I get a couple hours in, and I hire a lot of good staff. I'm well taken care of.
Very good. Well, thank you, Paul. We appreciate it. So now that we have all this information, the question is, what are we going to do with it? To switch gears and kind of bring this point home, let's talk about the City of Janesville's comprehensive plan update and how it could help improve our housing situation. Our final panelist is Mick Gilbertson, who is the principal of the Developing Edge, a real estate development, architectural design, and consulting firm. Mick is also on our board and is another one of our in-house housing experts and development experts. And Mick, I wanted you to come on to give us a brief summary of the comprehensive plan, what it is and how it guides development in a community. So Mick, over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Dan, and thank you all for joining us today. This is one of the great things I think that Forward Janesville does, and BMO helped sponsor this. So it's just a way to kind of get some information out there. So the city of Janesville does have a comprehensive plan. It was established in 2009, and by statutory requirements, it's needed to be updated periodically. They're going through that update right now, and the plan will serve as a primary tool for pretty much all the land use, development, housing, transportation, utilities, pretty much anything the city touches is involved within the comprehensive plan, and it gives them a framework to move forward with that work. The time frame that the plan addresses is somewhere between 20-25 years, with periodic updates happening about every 10 years. They started this last update session last year, I believe in early 21. They were hoping to kind of have the update wrapped up, towards fall of this year, but with staffing at the city and plus the economic development department being very busy, they've pushed that deadline back probably to spring of 23 for the completion of the new plan. So that's kind of the framework of the plan and their timeline for that.
Thank you, Mick. So the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee is in the process of reviewing various parts of the plan, even as we speak. So, and recently they probably still are reviewing the housing section of it right now. Forward Janesville recently submitted some comments to the steering committee, which I am going to attempt to post in the chat section right now. So hopefully that link works. If not, somebody yell and tell me that it's not working. But can you tell us more about Forward Janesville's recommendations to the city for the housing section of the plan?
Sure. The last meeting the steering committee had, which is basically the plan commission to review the housing section of this, was on May 16th. And Angela Plakes and I attended that meeting along with some others. And basically there's four main points that we may want to make recommendations to the city under the public comment section of that. One was kind of review the existing housing that is in the city. Where's it at? What's the state of it? Then develop some new housing strategies based on that review. The third point is, how do we combine the review information that we have along with those strategies that we have? And then the fourth point was to find a way to supplement development through public financing. Within the housing review, there's kind of four steps. We looked at that also. First is, to look at what worked well in the 2009 plan, what was accomplished, what wasn't accomplished, and how can we address that to leverage more housing into the city. We wanted to focus on neighborhoods, at the same time leveraging the assets of the community, our riverfront school systems, Blackhawk Tech, bike trails, UW Whitewater, all those things that kind of make Janesville. Also, we need to address more affordable housing. We need to make a commitment beyond just single family houses and larger apartment complexes. Housing trends are changing right now, and first time owners don't necessarily want a big home with a big lawn. They're looking at something a little bit smaller, not spending all their free time on maintenance, things like that. Seniors in the community are looking to move away from those big homes for the same reasons. They may not be here year round. They may want a smaller unit in a more walkable neighborhood, more of kind of one of those traditional neighborhoods. And then also, instead of always looking at greenfield expansion, which tends to be going to the northwest, the south and the west sides of Janesville has been kind of underdeveloped in terms of housing expansion. And there's infill properties through existing neighborhoods that could be used to help try to leverage some of that development. So those are kind of the points there. Looking at, what are successful housing strategies? The housing ordinances really need to change in the city of Janesville. I believe they were written back in the mid to late 80s, and they're very Euclidean in their approach, where it's very prescriptive, saying if you want a house, it has to be this minimum size on this minimum lot, and you can only do it in this area. If you want duplexes, you can only do that on these lots. You can only have so many of those. If you want to put multifamily, it has to be in this area, not necessarily in that area. Also, more tax incremental financing. the city and the state is very handcuffed when it comes to development and what government's going to offer for developers to come in and do things. But TIF and TIDs are one way of doing that. And then also looking at public funding options, whether it's WIDA, USDA, Rural Development Programs, HUD, Home, or CDBG grants. So those are some of the tools that are out there. Then the idea is that we need to roll all this together, put this together in terms of what the new strategies are and what we need to do to address the housing, and try to find some implementation plan to execute this. It could be, looking at older neighborhoods that are 2-story, newer neighborhoods that are 1-story, and trying to decide what that demand really is within the market. There's other options you can do. You think about, the iconic picture of San Francisco with all the row houses. That's a 0 lot line development. We could do something like that in Janesville, where I know the builders are always very excited to have that party wall between 2 units, because it's one less wall they have to build. It's, less materials, less cost going into the project. It's a smaller lot, there's less maintenance, and the development costs will drop with that, because instead of running, utilities every 100 feet, maybe they're running utilities every 60 feet or every 40 feet. So the cost of developing those sites can come down. And then we need to really look, at transitioning senior to workforce housing. How does that work? What does a young family want for a house? They want a 2-story house, master suite on the 1st floor, 2nd bedroom above, a little bit smaller home, a little bit smaller lot, and just making it more affordable that way. And same thing with the senior transition, developing walkable neighborhoods where they can find the amenities and the services they need within walking distance versus having to get a car and drive. So that's kind of it, pulling together with some public funding sources, whether it's TIDs, things like that. Those are more things that we need to look at to try to offset some of those first costs to the developers to get more development within the city and address that need. Because it does come to a workforce thing too. If there's no apartments or homes available, it's really hard to convince a new employer to come into the market. They're going to bring new jobs, new people in if they can't find a spot to house those workers.
Right, exactly. And for more information and more detail about some of the ideas that Mick is talking about, please do take a look at this document. Really comprehensive and impressive document, in my opinion, but I'm a little biased, of course. But this is an example of the kind of work we do at Forward Janesville, and we want people to know about it and to be aware. So check the link in the chat for more information. And it was also in the email reminder about this call that went out at 10, and we'll find other ways to publicize that as well. But do take a look at that, because we think they're really good recommendations, and hope the city will adopt and consider them. So Mick, we've submitted as Forward Janesville some of our comments about housing. How can citizens get involved in this process of the comprehensive plan update?
As I said before, the steering committee is basically the plan commission, and they meet regularly, usually the same night the plan commission meets. They don't have any meetings upcoming scheduled for the steering committee, but if you go to the City of Janesville's website, go under Department and Services, go to Public Works, go to Planning Division. Underneath there's a whole web portion of the website that's dedicated to the comprehensive plan. And within there, when we go into the comprehensive plan and go to the comprehensive plan update, it'll give you a timeline in there. And there's also a link for community engagement. They have a couple different ways. They have a social pinpoint app where you can go in, add comments, click a spot, say, God, this river walk is great, which have a whitewater rafting course on it, something like that. And you can begin to add your comments that way. You can attend the meetings. They do take public comment at the meetings, or I'm sure Dwayne Cherrick or David Sherman at the City Planning Department would take comments by email also.
Yeah, thank you, Mick. And it's been an interesting process. And we also, as Forward Janesville, will share opportunities as they come up and let you know basically what's happening with this comprehensive plan. Our new president and CEO, Angela Paasch, is all over this. I mean, she's very, very interested, because she knows that this document will really guide the future of development in Janesville. And it's super important that we get this right if we want to grow in the right direction. And I think that's certainly an important thing. So Mick, thank you for your comments. We appreciate it very much. In the last 5 minutes of the call, if there are any questions, please do post them in the chat. I said this call was going to be from 12 to 1. I always, I fib a little bit. We try to keep these to 45 minutes so you can get on to your 1 o'clock, so if you have any. So Nancy McDonald, our pal, has posted a bunch of information in the chat about TIF policy, the application, also some information on housing tax credits, and more information on historic tax credits, which certainly come into play with certain types of housing in certain neighborhoods in the community. So Nancy, as always, thank you for your input. You're always a fountain of information, and we appreciate that. So with that, any questions? If you don't want to put it in the chat, you can just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask. Anybody? It's a quiet bunch. You see, this is the sign of a good call, is when you don't have any questions afterwards, you have truly covered all of your bases. So any questions? All right, with that, I would turn it over to our panelists. If anybody's got any closing remarks or things they'd like to say, final conclusions, anything like that. I didn't prepare you guys for this part.
No, I just want to say thank you to everybody for your time today. It was great being here. I love learning about what's going on. And again, if you have any questions about housing, just want to talk, you know where to find me.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Have a good day, everyone. Have a happy 4th of July, safe weekend.
That's right. So don't forget, there's plenty of festivities to happen. And building off our call last month, if you're looking for something to do this weekend, go visit the Janesville Convention and Visitors Bureau website, and you can go ahead and build an itinerary of all the great things to do on the 4th of July weekend here. So Nancy asked, are there additional planning sessions for the comprehensive plan scheduled? If so, please attend. Nancy, I think we'll get you that information as we go along here. We're sharing that information as it becomes available. So we're trying to plan ahead with that stuff. So yeah, certainly that will be something we will be sharing with folks. So with that, I'd like to thank again BMO Harris Bank. I know there are some BMO folks on the call. We love hearing from Sal. It's been tremendous, the partnership that we've been able to establish with you, and we appreciate it so very much, and hope to continue to have BMO experts on our calls, because they really set things up nicely. It's a kind of an overview, then we drill down into the local. So I think this has been an excellent call. So thanks again to BMO for all their support. And with that, I believe we will adjourn. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Thanks, Cal. Thanks, Mick. Thank you, Kelsey.